Yesterday, Olivia Munn announced that her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. She had encouraged her mom to calculate her lifetime risk of breast cancer using the same calculator that led to her own breast cancer diagnosis. Her mom obviously had a high score of greater than 26%, especially with a daughter that was diagnosed with breast cancer in her 40s. This prompted an MRI where she was found to have stage 1 HER2 positive invasive ductal carcinoma. Olivia was also recently on one of my favorite podcasts, Not Skinny But Not Fat, talking about the importance of the risk calculator. I highly recommend you go listen to the full episode, but I wanted to talk about why it's so important to understand your breast cancer risk and what you need to do if you're high risk. Hi, my name is Dr. Robin Roth, aka the Booby Docs. I'm a breast radiologist, which means I'm the doctor who specializes in breast cancer screening. So when we talk about annual screening mammography beginning at age 40, that actually only applies to average risk individuals, not high risk individuals. So that recommendation really implies some understanding of your breast cancer risk, which is why it's so important that Olivia Munn is using her platform to highlight this important breast cancer risk assessment tool. The American College of Radiology recommends that all women, especially Ashkenazi Jewish and Black women, have a breast cancer risk assessment, ideally at age 25, so we can identify high-risk individuals that would start breast cancer screening earlier and more often with MRI. It's really easy to find out your breast cancer risk using this free online calculator, the Tyrer-Cuzick calculator that Olivia continues to talk about. It takes less than 5 minutes to find out your score. Seriously, go pause this video and go do it, and then come back. It's going to ask you a number of factors, but the most important factors that go into this is really a family history of breast cancer in a first or second degree relative. Age of diagnosis really matters. If it's premenopausal, that's a higher risk. Also, if you've had a prior biopsy that was atypical, that is a high risk. Also, breast density. If you know that you have dense breast tissue, that goes into play here. So you're going to plug in all your information and it will calculate your breast cancer risk score. Average risk for developing invasive breast cancer over your lifetime is about 1 in 8 or 12.5%. If you see greater than 20%, that's considered high risk. And these are the patients that we are really trying to identify. If you have an elevated lifetime risk of breast cancer, there's basically 2 ways to go about finding your breast cancer early. The first way is through increased screening. So we would start breast cancer screening at age 25 with an MRI, and then starting at age 30, we would add on a mammogram, alternating every 6 months. So you're not going more than 6 months without doing some kind of breast cancer screening. A good rule of thumb is to start breast cancer screening 10 years before a first-degree relative that was diagnosed with breast cancer. Also, if you're greater than 15 to 20% lifetime risk of breast cancer, you might want to also consider genetic testing. I really think everyone should consider genetic testing because knowledge is power, but it's important to know that you could be negative for a genetic mutation and still be high risk for developing breast cancer, as in Olivia Munn and her mother's case. Now, a lot of people were asking me why Olivia Munn had a negative mammogram and an ultrasound right before her MRI, which showed multifocal bilateral cancer. Honestly, I can't answer that. I wasn't her radiologist, but I will tell you that there are some cancers, such as invasive lobular cancer, that are poorly visualized on a mammogram and even an ultrasound. I also assume that she has very dense breast tissue, which makes it harder to find small breast cancers. But thankfully, she got an MRI, which is a more sensitive and expensive imaging test, which is why it's usually reserved for high-risk individuals such as her. However, I do want to point out that there are abbreviated MRIs that are much more accessible and cheaper if you're not high risk for breast cancer but want that extra screening, and they usually cost under $300 out of pocket. Don't quote me on that. Now, if you're high risk for breast cancer, but you're not into all that extra screening, there are other ways that we can lower your risk of developing breast cancer, such as medications like tamoxifen, which can lower your risk of developing breast cancer. They do have significant menopausal side effects, though. Also, if you have a genetic mutation or a very, very high risk of developing breast cancer, you can consider having a discussion about a prophylactic mastectomy, which is a really big decision and should not be taken lightly. A mastectomy is an amputation. I am wishing Olivia and her mother the best as they navigate life after breast cancer together. I hope that was helpful. Do you know your breast cancer risk score? Let me know in the comments. As always, follow the Booby Docs for more of the breast information.